My name is Lenora Tellis. I'm 32 years old, and the night my boyfriend quietly called me mediocre in front of his friends, I didn't cry, scream, or throw a drink in his face. I smiled, paid my share of the bill, and walked out. 3 months later, he was back in his childhood bedroom, broke and humiliated, while I was in the best shape of my life, running a booming electrical business and getting ready for a date with a man who actually asks about my dreams, not my income. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That night, the restaurant looked like something out of a movie. Floor-to-ceiling windows, the Chicago River glittering outside, candles on every table, soft jazz humming in the background. We were at a long table for 12, celebrating Noah's friend Amanda's birthday. Everyone was dressed like they were auditioning for a luxury car commercial. I was in a simple black dress I could actually move in, necklace my grandma left me, hair up in a low bun because I'd been on a job site until an hour earlier. My work truck was still parked a few blocks away, dusty and dented, filled with ladders, conduit, and coil after coil of wire. To me, that truck is freedom. To Noah, apparently, it was an embarrassment. He hadn't said that yet, not out loud, not in words I could pin to anything. It was all in the way his hand tightened on my waist when we walked in and his friends looked me up and down. In the way he turned slightly away when one of them asked, "You came straight from work again, Lenora." Like work was something you washed off before being allowed into those glass doors. I hadn't done anything yet, and already I had that feeling. The one where you know something is off but you can't prove it. Like hearing a hum in the walls and knowing there's a bad connection somewhere. Let me back up. I didn't grow up dreaming about white dresses or Instagram perfect anniversaries. I grew up in a drafty rental with old wiring that tripped the breaker every time my mom ran the microwave and the toaster at the same time. Most kids are scared of the dark. I was scared of the dark and the popping sound the outlet made when you plugged in the vacuum. By 15, I'd taken apart more lamps than I can count. By 18, I knew I wanted to work with electricity, not just because it fascinated me, but because it felt like control in a world that was constantly shorting out. I got my apprentice license at 19. Those early years were brutal. Summer days in attics where it felt like 130 degrees, sweat burning my eyes while I fished cables through ancient walls. Winter mornings in unheated shells of buildings, fingers numb, breath fogging in the headlamp beam. Crawl spaces so tight my shoulders still crack when I turn wrong. My mentor, Ray, was old school. The kind of guy who believed if you weren't bleeding a little, you weren't working hard enough. No coddling, no shortcuts. You learn by doing, he'd say when I was wedged in some impossible space, trying to run conduit around a 30-year-old mistake. Or you go sell candles at the mall. He taught me how to read blueprints like they were novels, how to calculate loads in my head while someone was yelling about deadlines, how to walk into a dead building and see the paths electricity would take before a single wire was in the walls. He also taught me the one thing that would end up saving me later: protect yourself. That lesson didn't come from a breaker panel. It came from my uncle. My uncle ran an HVAC business, built it from nothing. Vans, tools, loyal client list. Then he got married, never separated things legally, never protected the business. 10 years later, brutal divorce. I remember sitting at his kitchen table at 23, watching him explain how he had to sell off 2 vans and let an employee go just to pay the settlement. He looked like someone had shut the power off behind his eyes. That's what happens when you mix feelings and assets without thinking, he told me. Love's great, kid. Contracts are better. It sounds cold, I know, but it stuck. So when I started my own operation at 25, I did it with my eyes wide open. Took out a small business loan, bought a used truck, signed a lease on a tiny industrial space. I worked 16-hour days, answered emergency calls at midnight, underbid jobs just to get my company name out there. Some months I wasn't sure I could make payroll for my one apprentice. I lived off ramen and peanut butter sandwiches. But little by little, things shifted. Word of mouth brought bigger jobs. Commercial accounts started calling. A property manager liked my work and recommended me to another. I bought a second truck, then a third. Now, I clear around $180,000 a year after expenses. I own a 3-bedroom bungalow in North Center I bought in 2019 that's gone up in value. The truck is paid off. I've got about $95,000 spread between business accounts, an emergency fund, and retirement. I'm not rich, but I'm stable, and every outlet, every panel, every switch I wired myself is part of that. That's who I was when I met Noah. I met him at a friend's birthday party in May 2021. I'd come straight from a job, still in work boots and Carhartt pants, hair in a messy bun, hands nicked and scraped. He was the opposite of everything in my world. Slim-cut shirt, perfect hair, watch that looked too expensive for his marketing coordinator salary. He worked for a mid-tier beauty brand, making around $55,000 a year, which he told me within the first half hour. Not bragging, just letting me know. He was funny, I'll give him that. Quick with jokes, good at reading the room. I had a beer. He had a cocktail with a twist of something I couldn't pronounce. He asked what I did, and I waited for the usual reaction. It didn't come. You're an electrician? His eyes lit up. That's actually sick. Those are hands that build things. He took my hand, my calloused, still slightly dirty from work hand, and turned it over gently, like it was something worth studying. No disgust, no, wow, that's different for a woman. Just curiosity, admiration even. That moment lodged under my skin. The first year with Noah was genuinely good. We were both busy, but we made time. Weekend walks through different neighborhoods, trying small restaurants that smelled amazing but had plastic chairs. Free concerts in Millennium Park in the summer, where we sat on a blanket and argued about which food trucks were overrated. He never complained about my truck. I'd show up in steel-toe boots and a hoodie that smelled faintly like solder, and he'd kiss my forehead like I was still the most beautiful woman in the room, at least in the beginning. We talked about real future things, not just we should go somewhere sometime, but actual plans. An Ireland trip when we had enough saved, a dog when my schedule softened, maybe moving in together down the line. We opened a shared travel fund, each putting in $200 a month. By our first anniversary, we had almost $5,000 saved. His apartment was a small, curated Lakeview studio with plants and string lights, framed prints on the wall, and one of those little carts with matching liquor bottles and glasses. Mine was bigger, more practical, a house with half-painted trim and a workshop in the garage that smelled like sawdust and metal. When he wanted cozy, we stayed at his. When he wanted space, mine. It felt balanced, real, normal. Then money started slipping into the cracks. My best friend Chris has known me since trade school. He runs his own plumbing business now. We've been through everything together. Failed inspections, nightmare clients, jobs that went sideways overnight. He's the kind of friend who tells you the truth, even when it's the last thing you want to hear. Around 8 months into my relationship with Noah, we were grabbing lunch between jobs. I was inhaling a sandwich in the front seat of my truck. Chris leaned against the bumper, scrolling on his phone. "So how's Pretty Boy?" he asked, smirking. I rolled my eyes. "His name is Noah, and he's fine." Chris shrugged. "I'm just saying. Last time we all hung out, he asked what you cleared on that office job. Month before that, he asked how much your tools cost. Today he asked what your net was last quarter." I paused mid-bite. "He's just interested in what I do," I said. "He likes numbers." Chris gave me a look I've only ever seen when he finds a hidden leak behind a wall. That slow, skeptical tilt of the head. "Maybe. Just keep your eyes open, Lenora. My ex did the same thing before she started comparing me to her friends' husbands." I laughed it off. But that night, when Noah casually asked how much my newest commercial contract was worth, the words hit a little different. He wasn't rude about it. At first, it was just a lot of questions. How much does a panel upgrade run? What do you charge per hour? How much did you profit last month? All delivered with that easy smile, like we were just talking about the weather. But every question is a probe, and when someone keeps poking the same spot, eventually you start to bruise. 6 months ago, things really started to slide. Little things at first. A travel show playing in the background and Noah saying, "Wouldn't it be amazing to stay somewhere like that?" About a ridiculous overwater bungalow in the Maldives that cost more per night than my truck did per month when I still had payments. I'd laugh. Maybe in a few years, when the business scales more. His smile would flatten. The light would dim in his eyes just a little. On the couch, he'd scroll Instagram and linger on engagement rings the size of small planets, designer handbags, and vacation photos. I'd watch his thumb hover, eyes narrowing, as if he were studying for an exam. Then there were his friends. Nicole's boyfriend bought her a Tiffany bracelet. Jess's boyfriend surprised her with a weekend in Cabo. Amanda's boyfriend leased her a BMW for her birthday. Every time we left one of those hangouts, Noah got quieter, less present, more elsewhere. 3 months ago, he stopped texting me during the day as much. If I sent him a photo from a job site, something funny my apprentice said, or a panel I was proud of, I'd get a one-word reply hours later. Nice. Cool. Wow. Our standing Friday date nights became every other Friday, then once a month. Then, let's see how my week goes. The night everything started to crack open, we were sitting in my living room, takeout containers sweating on the coffee table between us. I'd ordered his favorite sesame chicken. He was staring at his phone. "This is getting cold," I said gently. He put his phone face down, sighed, and finally looked at me. "I just feel like we're not progressing," he said. There it was. Progressing how? I asked carefully. Like, where is this actually going, Lenora? My friends are moving into luxury condos, getting engaged, going on real vacations. I'm still driving to a bungalow in North Center to eat takeout on your couch while you're too tired to go anywhere nice because you're crawling through ceilings all day. It landed like a slap. I swallowed, kept my voice even. "I love you," I said slowly. "I'm not just coasting here. I've been actively saving for a bigger house. I've got a plan to expand the business. I was planning to propose in the next year." His eyes flicked up at that, startled. For a second, there was the Noah I knew, soft, hopeful. Then the calculation slid back in. "I didn't know that," he said. I grabbed my laptop and pulled up my spreadsheets, showed him my business growth projections, the accounts I was building, the timeline I'd carefully planned out. Bigger house in 3 years, ring before that, dog in the middle. I laid it all out, numbers and dates. He nodded slowly. "It's something," he said. Something. Not enough, not fast enough. He kissed my forehead when he left that night, but I watched him walk down my driveway and felt this weird, hollow feeling in my chest, like a breaker had tripped somewhere, and I just hadn't found the panel yet. 2 weeks later, we went to Amanda's birthday dinner. The Italian place was the kind of restaurant Noah's friends loved posting on Instagram. Cloth napkins, wine list thicker than a code book, menu with prices that made you blink twice. I wore a navy button-down dress and low heels. My calluses were healing, but still there. My phone buzzed with texts from my apprentices about a panel they'd finish in the morning. I muted it and slipped it into my bag. When I got there at 7:30, Noah was already at the bar with his friends, laughing too loudly, leaning in too close. He barely looked at me when I walked up, just brushed a kiss against my cheek and turned back to whatever story he was telling. Our group table was by the window, overlooking the river. Candles flickered. Glasses clinked. The conversation quickly turned into a flex-off. Brad had just bought a Tesla Model S, fully loaded, 95 grand. He passed his phone around, showing off photos. "Man, autopilot is insane," he bragged. "It practically drives itself. The sound system alone is worth..." Jason jumped in with the condo he'd just closed on. 2-bedroom in River North, $480 now, but easily $600 in 3 years. Someone else started talking about stock options and potential bonuses after their startup's IPO. I stayed quiet. I don't begrudge anyone their toys. I just don't need to wear my money like jewelry for it to be real. I was cutting into my chicken parmesan, focusing on the food, when Noah laughed and said it. "Well, Lenora's still driving her work truck everywhere," he said, tone so light it took my brain a second to catch up. The table quieted, then erupted in awkward chuckles. Not cruel, just that nervous laugh people do when they can tell something wasn't as harmless as it sounded. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. "It's paid off," I said, looking at him. "No debt, no monthly payments. It gets the job done." He rolled his eyes. Actually rolled his eyes. "That's not the flex you think it is, babe." Something in my chest tightened. Hard. I set my fork down carefully. Smiled like nothing was wrong. "Excuse me," I said, standing up. "Bathroom." I walked past the bar, past couples clinking glasses, into the harsh fluorescent light of the restroom. Cold water. Sink. My reflection staring back at me, mascara flawless, lipstick still in place. On the outside, I looked like I belonged in that restaurant. On the inside, I felt like a kid again, standing in a dark kitchen listening to the breaker trip. "Let it go," I whispered to myself. "He was just showing off. You can talk about it tomorrow." I dried my hands, squared my shoulders, and walked back out. And that was when I heard him. He was leaning towards Amanda, voice low but not low enough, words sliding through the clatter of plates like a live wire. "I just don't see her ever getting to the level I want," he said. "She's comfortable being mediocre, no real ambition to level up." Mediocre, no ambition. From a man who'd never once crawled through an attic in August. I stopped dead behind his chair, 3 feet away, hand resting on the back of an empty seat. For a moment the room blurred, my ears rang, then everything snapped into focus. I didn't say a word. I walked around the table, sat down, and finished my dinner in silence. When the bill came, I pulled out my wallet, placed $85 in cash on the tray, my meal, my drinks, my tip. I stood up. "Noah," I said. He turned, mid-sentence, about some rooftop bar he wanted to hit next. "Yeah?" he asked, annoyed at the interruption. "You're right," I said calmly. "I'll never be good enough for you." Confusion flickered across his face, then panic. "What? Lenora, wait, that's not—" I turned to the table, smiled. "It was nice seeing all of you. Happy birthday, Amanda." Then I picked up my bag, walked out of that expensive restaurant, and didn't look back. I drove home in silence, my old truck rattling over potholes, the city lights blurring past. No music, just the sound of my thoughts humming like a transformer. By the time I pulled into my driveway, something in me had gone very, very still. I wasn't sad. I was done. I made a sandwich, sat at my kitchen table, opened my laptop, and did what I do best when there's a power problem. I started tracing the lines, not of wires this time, but of words, money, and history. That was the night I stopped being Noah's girlfriend and started being my own lawyer, accountant, and bodyguard. I woke up the next morning with that eerie, hollow calm people mistake for strength. It wasn't strength, it was shock wrapped in logic. The kind of feeling you get after a near miss on the highway. Your hands steady, breath even, mind oddly clear because your brain hasn't caught up to the emotional wreckage yet. My phone had blown up overnight. 6 texts from Noah, 3 missed calls, 2 voice notes I didn't bother opening. I didn't respond. Not because I was playing games, but because I had nothing left to say. When someone tells you who they are, you don't debate it. You take note, close the door, and walk away. Still, I wasn't naive enough to think things were done. Not yet. People like Noah don't let go quietly. But before the fallout came the slow burn, the months of erosion that led to that dinner. It didn't happen all at once. That's the lie people like to tell when they look back on a breakup. It happened out of nowhere. No, it didn't. You just didn't want to see the cracks forming. For us, the cracks started on nights like the one when we watched a travel documentary about Santorini. Noah sighed loudly, the kind of sigh that begs for attention. "God, imagine staying there," he said, eyes glued to a cliffside infinity pool that cost more per night than my mortgage. I smiled. Maybe in a few years, once the business expansion settles. He inhaled sharply through his nose, a tiny, polite sound, one that said, "A few years? Seriously?" Or there were the Instagram scrolls, Noah stopping on photos of engagement rings, luxury hotels, drone shots of private islands. His thumb would hover on the screen just a second too long, like he was measuring his life against strangers. Then came his friends. Nicole's boyfriend leasing her a BMW, Jess's boyfriend surprising her with Cabo, Amanda's boyfriend buying her a Gucci bag, just because. Each time we left their group hangouts, Noah got quieter. Like every gift those men gave their girlfriends drained something from him, like he was suddenly standing in a race he didn't know he'd entered. He never said it directly, but I could read the tension in his shoulders, in the way he held my hand just a little too loosely, in the way his smile faded when he looked at my practical clothes, my steel-toe boots in the corner, my dusty work truck parked out front. Love turns sour long before anyone says a word. The night the dam broke was a Tuesday in July. We were sitting in my living room, the AC buzzing in the background, takeout containers still warm on the coffee table. I'd ordered his favorite sesame chicken. He didn't touch it. He was scrolling on his phone, jaw flexing every few seconds. "This is getting cold," I said softly. He put his phone face down and finally met my eyes. "I just feel like we're not progressing," he said. My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "Lenora, my friends are leveling up, moving into nicer places, getting engaged, going on real vacations, and I'm still here." He gestured toward my living room like it was a downgrade. "I want more." More. That word hung in the air like a threat. "I love you," I said. "I'm not drifting. I've been planning for us. Saving, building. I was going to propose next year." His eyes widened, but not with happiness. Shock, maybe. Surprise, but not joy. "I didn't know that." "Because I wasn't ready to rush. I wanted to build a foundation first. Something solid. Something ours." He nodded slowly, eyes distant. He wasn't hearing me. He was hearing what his friends had. Cars, condos, rings, and what he didn't. It was the first moment I realized he wasn't comparing me to other women. He was comparing himself to other men, and he was resenting me for not helping him keep up. When he left that night, he kissed my forehead the way he always did. But as he walked down my driveway, there was a crack in the air, a faint humming, the unmistakable warning of a system overloaded and about to fail. Then came Amanda's birthday dinner. I could write 10 pages about that restaurant. The polished wood tables, candles flickering in brass holders, the faint smell of garlic and basil drifting from the kitchen. The river outside looked like melted gold under the streetlights. Everyone arrived, dressed to impress. Brad in a tailored suit talking loudly about his Tesla, Jason showing photos of his new condo with floor-to-ceiling views, someone bragging about an IPO bonus that hadn't even happened yet. Noah slipped into that world like he was born for it. I didn't fit. I knew I didn't. But I wasn't ashamed. My black dress was simple but classic. My hands were rough, sure, but capable. My truck was old, yes, but paid off. Everything I had, I built. While they passed around plates of bruschetta and calamari, Noah positioned himself like a candidate interviewing for a job. Perfect posture, loud laughter, elbows off the table. Then came the line. "Well, Lenora's still driving her work truck everywhere," he said, a little too quick, a little too eager. It was meant to sound casual. It didn't. The table went silent for a split second before the nervous chuckles surfaced. I felt heat crawl up my neck. "That truck is paid off," I said calmly. "No debt." Noah rolled his eyes. "That's not the flex you think it is, babe." I felt something in my chest shift. Not break, shift. Like a panel being switched off. A quiet click that changes an entire circuit. I excused myself to the restroom. In the mirror, I didn't look hurt. I looked emptied. Like someone had reached inside and unplugged every emotion except one, resolve. I splashed cold water on my face. "He's nervous," I whispered, "trying to impress his friends. Don't blow up. Talk about it tomorrow." I believed that, for about 3 minutes. Walking back to the table, weaving through waiters carrying plates of risotto, was when I heard him. "I just don't see her ever getting to the level I want," Noah said, laughing bitterly. "She's comfortable being mediocre. No ambition to level up." The words hit me harder than any slap could have. I stood 3 feet behind him, close enough to see the little smirk on his face, close enough to hear the truth, his truth, without him knowing I was there. Comfortable being mediocre. A man who had never crawled through attics in August, never run conduit through a ceiling until his arms went numb, never worked 16-hour days to build something from scratch was calling me mediocre. I didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't storm out. That's not who I am. I sat down, finished my meal, placed my $85 in cash on the table, stood up, and calmly said, "You're right, Noah. I'll never be good enough for you." Then I walked out. When I got home, I didn't collapse or scream into a pillow. I didn't call Chris or my mom. Instead, I made a sandwich. Then I opened my laptop. And I documented everything. Every text, every complaint, every question about my income, every comment dripping with insecurity he tried to disguise as ambition. I listed our shared accounts, mine, his, what needed canceling. I took screenshots of the early days, when he bragged about me, when he posted photos of us at taco stands or free concerts. I created folders, documentation, evidence, financial records, not because I planned to use them, but because I wasn't going to let him rewrite the story. Some women cry after heartbreak. Some drown in wine and bad decisions. Me, I build safety nets. Not because I'm paranoid, because I've watched what happens when you don't. By midnight, everything was sorted, labeled, backed up in the cloud. The relationship hadn't died at the restaurant. It had died weeks earlier. The dinner was just the autopsy. Noah expected tears. He expected shouting. He expected a dramatic scene or a long text that he could dissect with his friends. He expected the version of me he thought he understood. He didn't expect silence. Silence was the one language he never learned to interpret. The morning after the dinner from hell, my phone lit up like a switchboard. Dozens of texts, missed calls, voice messages I didn't bother opening. Every message had a different tone, confused, apologetic, defensive, demanding. He cycled through emotions like someone flailing in deep water, trying to find something to grab onto. But there was nothing to grab onto. I didn't reply. I didn't read most of it. I just watched the notifications pile up, like a storm I refused to step into. Instead, I tied my hair back, put on my work boots, grabbed my tools, and left the house. Electrical work is simple in a way people aren't. You don't argue with a faulty wire. You fix it or you cut it out. Noah became the latter. I'd texted Chris the night before, "Need coffee tomorrow, it's bad." He replied with a thumbs up emoji. Classic Chris. At 8 a.m., we were in our usual diner booth, surrounded by cracked vinyl seats, the smell of burnt coffee and scrambled eggs. Familiar. Solid. The opposite of Noah's world. Chris didn't need the story. He read it in my face. What'd he do? He asked. Cheat? Lie? Say something stupid? He called me mediocre, I said, stirring my coffee. Told his friends I'd never get to the level he wanted. Chris blinked twice, set his mug down, and whistled low. Wow, he said. He's dumber than I thought. I told him everything. The eye roll, the truck comment, the overheard conversation, the way Noah didn't know I was standing 3 feet behind him when he unraveled months of resentment in a single sentence. When I finished, Chris leaned forward. So what's your plan? You gonna let him grovel for a while? Make him sweat a bit? No, I said, I'm done. Chris tilted his head. Like, done? Done with him. Done with explanations. Done with the version of me he thinks he's entitled to. I'm cutting him off. Chris grinned, proud and maybe a bit impressed. Cold. I love it. So did I. When I got home, I gathered every single thing Noah had at my place. A few shirts, his toothbrush, a cheap hairdryer, half a drawer of socks, a hoodie he kept forgetting to take home. It all fit in a medium-sized box. Funny how someone who takes up so much emotional space can take up so little physical space. I folded everything neatly, because being done doesn't mean being messy. Then I taped the box shut. No tears. No hesitation. Just closure. My kind of closure. At 9 a.m., I was standing in Noah's apartment lobby. He always left for work early. He wouldn't be home. Hi, I said to the front desk attendant, dropping something off for Noah. She took the box and set it behind the counter. I placed an envelope on top. Inside it was his key. On the outside, everything here, key included, take care. No heart, no punctuation, nothing extra. I turned and walked out of the building with the kind of peace you feel when you flip the breaker on a dangerous circuit. Click, power off. The first wave of desperation hit before I'd even reached my truck. Missed call, text, another text. Lenora, please, just talk to me. You misunderstood. I didn't mean it like that. I was drunk. Please don't do this. We deserve a conversation. That last one made me laugh. He thought he deserved a conversation. He thought I owed him something. That was his first mistake. I blocked his number, then his Instagram, then Facebook, then every mutual app we ever used. Then I canceled his access to my Netflix and Spotify profiles. Not revenge, just housekeeping. By noon, Noah had enlisted help. My phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. I answered out of curiosity. Lenora, it's Nicole. Great. Noah's freaking out, she said. He said you just walked out. He says he doesn't know what he did. Oh, he told you that? I asked lightly. Yes. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. So I told her the truth. Every detail. Calm, steady, not angry, because anger would imply I still cared. There was a long silence on the other end. He didn't mention any of that, she finally whispered. He made it sound like you overreacted. I laughed softly. Of course he did. Lenora, I'm so sorry. That's awful. You don't deserve that. I know. More silence. We won't tell him we talked, she said. And honestly, I don't blame you for leaving. I said thank you and hung up. It felt like closing a file. I should have known Noah wasn't done. People who depend on your silence will fight hardest when you take it away. 2 days later, I was halfway up a ladder at a commercial remodel, running conduit above a drop ceiling, when Luis, my apprentice, walked in, eyes wide. Boss, there's a guy downstairs looking for you, says it's urgent. I knew before he said the name. It was the tone, the hesitation, the way Luis almost whispered it. It's Noah. I climbed down, wiped my hands on my jeans, and walked toward the building entrance. Noah stood there looking like he hadn't slept, hair a mess, dark circles under his eyes. His whole body was vibrating with frantic energy. Lenora, he said, stepping toward me. I didn't move. We need to talk, he pleaded. Just give me 5 minutes. No, I said. His eyebrows shot up, like the word no physically hurt him, like he'd never heard it used in a sentence that involved him. I didn't mean any of that, he insisted. I was stressed. I had a few drinks. Everyone vents about their partner sometimes. Complaining, I said, is saying someone leaves the milk out. What you did was tear down my character. It wasn't like that. You said I was mediocre, I cut in public, behind my back, after I've supported you for 3 years. He swallowed hard. You're blowing this out of proportion. There it was, belittling me to regain control. Lenora, he said, his voice rising, you're being childish. That word, childish. I tilted my head slowly, studying him, seeing him clearly for the first time without the fog of love or history. You were done with me long before that dinner, I said. I'm just the one brave enough to admit it. His face twisted. That's not true. It is, I said. You wanted someone flashier. Someone who made your life look like your friends. I wasn't that person, and I'm not going to apologize for it. He stared at me like I'd become someone he didn't recognize. But I hadn't changed. I'd just stopped dimming my light to make him feel brighter. "I have work to finish," I said, picking up my drill. "You should go." He opened his mouth again, but nothing came out. Then he turned and left. Luis watched him go and shook his head. "Ex?" "Yep." "Damn," he muttered. He looked wrecked. I shrugged. "Not my problem." Luis smirked. "Cold exit, boss." "Only way to do it," I said. And I meant it. That first week was just blocking. Unknown numbers, emails, messages through old group chats, attempts to reach me through mutual friends. I blocked each one, not with anger, with precision, like cutting dead wires from a live panel. Clean, permanent, necessary. But breakups don't end with blocking. Breakups end when the other person finally understands. You're not coming back. Noah wasn't there yet, but he would be. Soon, week 2 began with something unexpected. Silence. Not peace, not resolution, just the eerie, anticipatory kind. Like the moment before a breaker blows and the entire house goes dark. Noah had stopped calling, stopped texting from burner numbers, stopped begging through mutual friends. And when a man like Noah goes silent, it's never because he's calm. It's because he's busy. Busy trying to replace the thing he lost before he has to feel the weight of losing it. I didn't think about him much during those weeks. Not intentionally, more like the way your mind stops returning to a toothache once it's gone. You don't need reminders of pain that's no longer there. I focused on work, on myself, on the quiet satisfaction of walking into my workshop in the morning and seeing projects lined up, on the gym at 5:30 a.m., on Wednesday night, basketball with my college buddies, on cooking dinners I didn't have to justify or make pretty for Instagram. Life felt clean, simple, honest. But karma wasn't done. The first hint of Noah's new life came through Nicole. She called one night while I was labeling breaker circuits in my garage, her voice a mixture of disbelief and gossip-fueled adrenaline. "So," she said, "I guess Noah is dating someone new." I didn't flinch. "Okay." "Her name's Tessa, wealth management something, wears designer suits to brunch, drives a Mercedes." "Sounds on brand," I said. Nicole snorted. "That's the thing, he's different, like he's trying to be one of her people now." "I wish him luck." "You don't sound surprised." "I'm not." Nicole hesitated. "He's posting a lot. Fancy restaurants, rooftop bars, matching cocktails." I didn't check. I didn't need to. Men like Noah don't heal. They rebrand. A week later, the cracks started showing. Nicole and Jess invited me to a small rooftop hangout. I went. Not to hear about Noah, but because they'd been kind, and I wasn't going to let a breakup isolate me. But the moment I arrived, Jess blurted, "Okay, before we talk about anything else, you need to hear what happened at dinner last night." I raised an eyebrow. "What dinner?" "Nicole and I went out with Noah and Tessa." Nicole buried her face in her hands. "It was the most uncomfortable 2 hours of my life." Jess jumped in. "Tessa ordered for Noah. Like, didn't ask him. Just waved the waiter over and said, 'He'll have the filet, medium well.'" Nicole added, "And when he tried to talk about his job, she said, 'That's cute, honey.'" Cute. Honey. Like he was a toddler showing her a finger painting. Jess took a sip of her drink. "Then he told a story about your business, nothing personal, just something cool you did." And Tessa interrupted and said, "Yes, but that's not exactly a scalable career path, is it?" Nicole winced. We almost choked on our drinks. I felt nothing except mild amusement. "So he got what he wanted," I said. "A fancier world, fancier circles." Jess looked at me over her glass. "He looked miserable, Lenora." I shrugged. That's between him and his reflection. 2 more weeks passed. My business had its best month ever. I signed a contract with a property management company I'd been courting for nearly 2 years. I hired another apprentice, bought a new work truck, hit a personal record at the gym, lost 20 pounds, and gained more muscle than I'd had since my 20s. My life was moving forward. Noah's not so much. Nicole called again, this time with her voice lowered, like she was delivering classified information. "Tessa dumped him." "Ah," I said, "there it is." She met someone at her firm, some lawyer who went to Yale. Figures. "It gets worse," Nicole said. Noah told her he'd quit his job to pursue something more aligned with her lifestyle. She told him that made him less interesting. I paused. He quit his job? Yep, and she broke up with him the same night. Kicked him out of her apartment. Took back the watch she bought him. I exhaled slowly, not in sympathy, more like when you finally understand the shape of a story. "He's staying with his parents," Nicole added. "No job, no money, and he's not doing well. Not my problem, not anymore." But karma wasn't quite finished. A text came from an unknown number 2 nights later. I almost ignored it. Almost. But something made me open it. Lenora, it's Noah. I know you blocked me. I understand why. I messed up. I'm so sorry. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. I didn't appreciate you. I threw away everything for an image. Please, can we talk? Just coffee. Just 5 minutes. I need to apologize properly. I miss you. I miss us. Please. I stared at it for a long moment. Not because it stirred anything, because it didn't stir anything at all. And that's when I knew the story was over. Not the breakup, but the part of me that ever cared. I blocked the number without replying. Closure isn't a conversation. Closure is a decision. A week later, I ran into Noah's mom at the grocery store. She looked tired but kind, holding a carton of eggs and debating brands. When she saw me, her face softened. Lenora, she said quietly, how have you been? Good, I answered truthfully. She hesitated. Noah, he's been going through a hard time. I heard, I said simply. She closed her eyes, pained. I'm sorry for what happened, truly. His father and I always thought you were good for him. I nodded. Thank you. Would you ever consider talking to him, just to— No, I said gently, but I wish him well. Her shoulders dropped in resignation. You're a good woman, Lenora. I hope you find someone who knows that. I will, I said. I'm doing just fine. We parted ways, and for the first time, she believed me. 3 weeks later, I matched with a man named Eli on a dating app. A nurse, drives an old Honda, values authenticity, asks thoughtful questions, doesn't flinch when I tell him what I do, respects the grind, smiles with his whole face. We got coffee last Sunday, talked for hours, laughed easily, no performance, no competition, no silently evaluating what I drive or how much I earn. Just two people showing up honestly. It felt simple, and simplicity after Noah felt like luxury. Noah once said I wasn't progressing fast enough, that I didn't have the ambition to level up, that I was comfortable being mediocre. But here's the truth he never understood. There's no level above self-respect, and I refused to negotiate mine. He wanted a life that looked good online. I wanted a life that felt good in real time. He wanted status. I wanted substance. He wanted more. I became more, just not for him. When karma finally spoke, I didn't have to say a single word. Some stories end with an explosion. Mine ended with a quiet, clean cut. No anger, no revenge, no regrets.